to make sure to create a safe space for those attending meetings, and that can't just happen in the meeting. That's something that is a culture of your school. That safe space has to be happening all day, every day.
Welcome to School and Around, a podcast hosted by Branching Minds, featuring prominent leaders, subject matter experts, and thought innovators with their perspectives on the current challenges facing K-12 education. I am your host, Larissa Napolitan, a former teacher, instructional coach, and a member of the Branching Minds team, here to lead conversations and to shine a light on phenomenal educators and those that are on a mission to transform our schools and the lives of students. Maybe you've been listening for a while, or this is your first episode. If you like what you hear, would you do us a favor by rating and reviewing us on iTunes? This is a fantastic way to tell us you enjoy what we are creating. Also, if you want more MTSS resources, sign up for our weekly newsletter using the link in our show notes, and check out our website for all the blogs and guides you would ever need about MTSS. No matter the job, we all have feelings about work meetings, and educators are definitely not immune. Your time is often limited, and ineffective meetings can make or break a day, but it doesn't have to be that way. Today, I'm excited to dig into this topic a little bit with one of my favorite educators, Jodee Nelson from Lincoln County Schools in Wyoming. Welcome, Jodee.
Hey.
So, Jodee, just to kind of introduce you to our audience, maybe share a little bit about yourself, your position, and your school, and maybe in the light of meeting topics, a little icebreaker question, share a boring fact about yourself.
Okay. So, like I said, I'm Jodee. I am now in my 19th year of teaching. Most of that time has been in second grade, but I have taught some in first. I am now in my third year as the reading interventionist and the Title I coordinator at one of our K through 3 schools in our district. I actually just recently received my certification as a dyslexia interventionist. So I've been working on that this last year. So as part of my job, I am in charge of all of the reading interventions at our school, and I help teachers make instructional decisions based on all the data. So I love math. I really love math. I love to teach math. My passion, obviously, right now is in reading, but I love the the numbers game and the data game of that MTSS and seeing things. So we implement a school-wide Title I program. So there are about 350 students in our K through 3 school, and all of them can receive help. So I just like to help as many students as possible. A boring fact about myself, I do not like any food on my plate to touch. I'm like the one that grabs multiple plates. The worst is syrup on my pancakes.
Yeah.
But I will eat the bacon and the eggs and the hash browns first, then go back for the pancake.
Interesting. I love syrup on other things. So
No.
that's definitely, you're different than I am, but I love that was your point fact. That actually ends up being more interesting conversations than when people share fun facts, I think.
Right?
So, okay, as a teacher myself, I know that meetings are definitely not a popular part of the job. And you've been in this 19 years, so you definitely know. And as an interventionist, you probably attend a ton of meetings. So, and many teachers might say, like, this meeting could have been an email, or this was a waste of my time, or these meetings aren't really meant to be collaborative. So, if you were to answer the question, why do teachers or educators dislike meetings? What would you say?
So I would say the time factor. And just like some of the things you said, like you walk into a meeting, you're like, that could have been done in an email. Or else the time factor of like the random thoughts. I call them the squirrels. I'm great at it. I love squirreling. Like, and then you waste your time. Also, like teachers don't like being told what to do. So a lot of times we go into those meetings, it's a presentation instead of a conversation. And then again, it's like, why didn't you just email me and tell me if you weren't going to listen to me, right? And then a lot of times I feel like the purpose of those meetings isn't very clear. We sit and we talk in circles. We don't have clear next steps. And then we walk out saying, well, that was a waste of my time. Like, I didn't even know what we accomplished right then. So that's what I think the time
Yeah.
factor is what we don't dislike, what we
And
do dislike.
that makes so much sense because I mean, time is such like the most valuable currency educators have.
Hmm.
And I mean, that's why you see a lot of teachers in meetings multitasking. They've got that stack of
Right?
papers to grade, or they're updating grades in their grade book, typing up an email. Like they are multitasking within a meeting. Like I don't think I ever attended a meeting where everyone was like not someone was always multitasking.
Yeah. Or cutting out their laminating stuff, right?
That's
Yeah.
an elementary thing more than I
It
think a
is. It is
secondary
an
thing.
elementary.
But yeah, I feel like their time is one of those things where one of the best indicators of a leader, like their respect, is whether they're respecting the time of educators. And we can talk a little bit later about things that leaders can do, but I just feel like that part is so essential. So maybe let's talk a little bit about the good and bad of meetings. So tell me about a fantastic meeting that you had lately.
Okay, so I have had one recently. We walked right in. We had actually been given the agenda beforehand, so we were able to look at it. I, for one, like to process things before, and I don't like confrontational conversations. So I like to go through anything and see, like, is there anything I need to know before this meeting that I need to prep myself and put myself up for that I need to say, right? But I had that agenda going in. We actually didn't have any icebreakers. I don't love icebreakers. we, especially because for me, I love to talk. So if someone does an icebreaker and we start talking, I will like gab all day long. Oh yeah, this happened to me. Anyways, um, so no icebreakers. And then we just jumped right in and we focused on what was best for the students. We focused on what the data was telling us. Then we came up with the next steps, who's responsible for them, and we were done. In fact, we got done with the agenda and we're kind of sitting around, right? Because our meeting said in Google Calendar, we're staying to this meeting till 3:50, and everyone just kind of sits there like, do we have to stay? Well, no, like we're done. Let's get up and go. We got done early, but yeah, I think the agenda and just really staying on task makes a good meeting.
Yeah. So really, my next question would be like, what were some of the obstacles to make, like, think of maybe the worst meeting you've had.
Mhm.
What were some of the obstacles that made that meeting really hard? And you kind of mentioned it, like not a clear agenda, not a clear purpose for the meeting. Anything else that you would add to that?
Yeah. I would say not staying data driven. So I said that's what makes a good meeting, but that's also what can make a meeting hard is if we are focusing our conversations on assumptions or personal opinions and not what the data is telling us. Then we're not staying focused. We're not focusing on what is best for the student. Then we start focusing on, well, I'm not comfortable with that, or I've always done it this way. Those are obstacles. Also, just the people in the room, because we are a mix of personalities. It's a strength for a good meeting, and then it's also an obstacle in a meeting because as someone who's maybe running the meeting or in charge, that person needs to figure out how to use everyone's strengths and also be aware of those quieter ones and kind of watching their body language, giving them a chance to share or going to them afterwards and saying, "Hey, do you have an opinion on this? What are your insights and thoughts?"
I always think leaving space for the quiet people in the room is always really great because they're thinking. 9 times I found, and I say this as the talker, that my life goal is always to listen better.
Mhm.
But it is to really ask those people like, hey, what are your thoughts? Because they may not speak up, or they may not be the first one to offer what they think, but when they're asked, they have great things to share. I think is really key. I think I want to go back to something you said about just like staying focused. I think even more so, like when there is a time when things are like, hey, we're 5 minutes for this, 5 minutes for this, 10 minutes for this topic. I think sometimes that is even really helpful, especially for
Right.
the talkers, because we know if we have a clear set of this is how much time we're going to allow for this part of the meeting, then it really does help people keep on track. And even having somebody that's going to enforce that, because you
Yeah.
can have all those things, but if no one's going to say anything, I think it
Right.
can
Your
kind of
time
go off.
manager has to be someone who's willing to speak up and interrupt, to be like 5 minutes, 3 minutes. Yeah. But that
And I
definitely
think,
does help you stay focused.
so given your role as an interventionist, where you sit, you're working with students, but maybe you're also leading some meetings as well. Um, and you're kind of on both sides of it. So what do you think that maybe leaders forget when it comes to those meetings that have to happen during a school day?
So I think a lot of times, even me, I forget about what the teachers have had to do that day, and especially all the decisions that they've had to make.
Mm,
And because decision fatigue is real. And so then we get in these meetings where we're talking about students, we want to talk about the next step, and they're thinking, like, I got to go home and make dinner for my kids. Like, that's the next step. What am I going to make for dinner? What am I like? Just all of these thoughts. And I think sometimes having some options during a meeting helps. So I know in our meetings with MTSS, we have pathways of, if this intervention isn't working, then this is a possibility, instead of just starting with a blank slate
mm. Yeah,
of
asking
in
like, "What do
yeah,
you think?" And it's like, but if you give options, that's oh my gosh, that's brilliant. I love that.
yeah.
Tell me a little bit more. How do you feel like teachers respond when you sort of give them those options?
I think at our school they love it, because we know if this isn't working, we have this, and we certain people are trained, this is how you do it, and then we just kind of move through these steps that are already there for us, that have proven to work.
Yeah. Well, and I always think about those meetings that are happening during the school day. You're maybe coming from a busy class, you have like half hour meeting, and then you have to go back to teaching and go to the bathroom and eat lunch and, do all these other things. And so it's like your mind is really scattered and you've made all these decisions. And I think about how oftentimes I had such a hard time in those meetings really thinking super clearly. Like later on, when I've like really
Mhm.
had time to myself and I process it, then I can maybe have more insight or could make a decision. But I think that that's really helpful for for anybody who's like
Right.
they're a busy teacher trying to do their best to process all the information that's being thrown at
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
Yeah. So, do you feel like so we talked a little bit about some meeting norms. Do you feel like you have any meeting norms that you love or you think are just super important? And not just this isn't just MTSS, but just in general, do you feel like you have a meeting norm that you really love?
Well, time management, of course, is that norm of be mindful of time, um, and respecting when the meeting needs to be done. I know I've had leaders who will end no matter what, like when our contract time is up. Like, we want to be respectful of your time. We'll take care of this another time. I love that. Um, Also, something that's important is that respectful communication, giving everyone equal voice, like we said earlier, that making sure the quieter ones have time to talk, or people, I know in meetings, I'm a lot of times that I need time to process this. Like, I can't give you an answer right now. I need an hour, or I need a day to just think about this before I can come back to you with an answer. And being able to respect that communication, also actively listening and being present. Like we talked about earlier too, like, how many times are we sitting in a meeting and someone's on their computer checking email? And I just think that's a really important norm, especially with all the technology that we have right now, to be present. If you aren't the note taker, close your laptop.
Mm,
Like let one person throw something up on the television so you can all see um, the picture of the student, and everyone else close your laptop. We don't need it. Um,
mm,
I I think that's an important one right now. And then also um, the bigger ones. There's more uncomfortable norms, and those would and like we shouldn't forget those. Those would be like being data driven and making our decisions based on that. But that means making ourselves be vulnerable, not
mm.
even in education, in any field that you're looking at data, you're looking at money, you're looking at numbers, like show your vulnerability of, hey, these are my students' scores. They didn't do the best. What helped me here? What's best
Mhm.
for students?
Yeah.
Um, those are, and then also like outcomes and who's responsible. I think a lot of times with norms, we like the easy ones, like let's stay on time, let's keep our computers closed. But there are hard ones of being vulnerable, and then also being confidential. Then if I'm vulnerable in a meeting, I would hope that those who are sitting across the table from me won't go out of the room and then speak ill of me.
Yeah. Well, I think that you brought up that idea of being vulnerable. And I even think that as just a place to also say, because, and I speak as someone who can get defensive really easily. Like when I
Mm-hmm.
feel like not attacked, but even just like feeling vulnerable, I'll get defensive. And so it's almost like you want to create an environment where that isn't the first response of people, that they can say, yeah, like I can be a learner and be curious instead of, right. Be curious instead of judgmental, of just like really
Yeah.
looking at the data. Let's be curious about it
Oh, I
instead
love
of
that.
like getting up our defenses. I think that can be really helpful in a meeting and so much more productive, right? Because when you have those, I always just feel like judgment or the defensiveness is a blocker to really productive meetings, because you have someone that will just kind of go around about defensiveness. And I say this in full vulnerability that could be me. Like
Right?
it's so
I've been
easy to
there
do that.
too. Yeah. Yeah, I've been there too. We get where we think what we are doing is right, and a lot of times it is, but there's always different ways. We forget that there's different ways to go
Mhm.
about things.
And something I've learned about defensiveness is that there's something behind it, right? There's a
Hmm.
fear usually behind it, a fear of being judged, a fear of like looking bad and insecurity, maybe. And so, like, sometimes I think as a leader, being just aware that that might be something that someone's experiencing and having maybe another conversation with them later of like, hey, let's talk about that, to
Yeah.
sort of help them grow in that. And which I know is hard and that takes time, but it also can help prevent time being lost later in a meeting.
Right.
I like that you said the bigger, scarier norms, because the other ones tend to be easy and surface level and maybe understood that that's what you should do, but there are those big ones. And staying, I think, outcome focused. I think you said that. I think that that's really
Hmm.
key, of just like, what is the action that is supposed to come from this meeting? And that's a good way to respect time. If there's not a particular action and it's just a sharing information, that can be an email, but
Right. Yeah.
everyone has to agree that they'll read the email. But, I think that that's really helpful to say the outcome of this meeting is this, and saying that up front so that everyone's
Hmm.
clear about what should happen. And then if you end the meeting 15 minutes early,
Then
everybody
we're
gets that
done.
15
Yeah.
minutes
We.
back.
Yep.
Yeah. I love all of those things. I even think the equal voice, there's lots of different ways that leaders can do that, is really trying to making sure that everyone has a space to share like certain protocols. I've been in different professional development settings where there's protocols to follow so that everyone has an open seat and everyone can
Hmm.
share, which is really helpful.
I learned that best. We had one of my teams, a really quiet team member, and one of our other team members would always say, "Hey, so and so, what are you thinking?" And I learned that years ago from her, and I've always tried to remember that in team meetings, to keep looking around at everyone's faces. You can tell when those quieter ones has something to share, and they're not going to just come out. They have to be asked. And usually, I think you brought this up, usually they're the most profound statements, and they've been listening so intently, that they can just put it all together and it's like, oh yes, there's our solution.
Yes.
That's at least my experience. Those quieter ones are just thoughtful, and
Yeah.
I I just love all their feedback whenever you can get them to talk.
I agree. I have a really good friend that's the quiet one in meetings, and oftentimes I would say, do you feel bad when other people speak more than you? She's like, no, I actually enjoy really listening, but she does end up having this like really profound statement that I appreciate that about her, that she's really
Mhm.
listened and processed. And again, it's a life skill I'm still working on, and I
Yeah.
think I'll probably work on forever.
Right.
Okay. One of my last questions is, we recently discussed AI on this podcast, and there's lots of ways that AI can help with meetings. So, which one aspect of a meeting do you think AI could really help you with?
Oh, I love that episode, by the way, and as I listened, I was like, "Oh, well, it could do this and this and this," but, um, the one thing I could think it could help with is the note-taking part of it. If it could record, like, have AI record you and then provide a summary, and then also the action steps of so and so is gonna do this, so and so is gonna do that. I think that would be a great way to use AI.
Yeah, taking away some of that, like, that, secretarial work from us
Mhm.
one person in the group. I mean, there's always one really great note taker, but I think that so that everyone can be really present. I think that
Yes.
was always a hard part, is, like, I might be taking notes, but it means I really wasn't super present in what was happening, or I didn't really contribute because I was busy trying to take notes. And so I think that that's a fantastic suggestion. I also think that maybe even a timer, like if AI could have sort of like, if it's listening in and saying, "You've spent 10 minutes on this. It's time to move on." Like it
Right? I
giving
love that.
accountability.
Yeah, yeah. I know also I love that Austin was telling ways that maybe branching minds could start using AI, and in my mind, I'm like, "Oh, well, what if it could make my list of kids for me? Because every week I make a list of the kids that we're gonna talk about that week and who are maybe showing that they're not making progress." Like, I have all of these ideas for Austin, how he could use
Mm.
AI for branching minds that would save me time.
Well, I will send this to our product team, but here's my plug. Like, there's some big reveals coming this fall. So this is my
Yeah.
teaser to all the listeners, is we've got some fantastic tools in our product that are going to be using AI. And I have to tell you that, like, there was something I sent to the product team this morning. I said, I just saw this. This is the dream. I said, like, this is the dream, and this is fantastic. So I'm so excited to like share that more
Oh,
with everyone.
I'm excited too because you guys are such I love branching, but you guys are just always such great listeners to the feedback, and you respond so well to the feedback, so I'm excited. Put me on, like, a beta test club for those.
Oh, I will. I'll pass your name along.
Okay.
So my last question in relation to meetings is, do you feel like, is there a secret tip that you wanna tell leaders out there about meetings?
I would just say to make sure to create a safe space for those attending meetings, and that can't just happen in the meeting. That's something that is a culture of
Mm,
your school, a culture of your business, like whatever place we're talking about, that safe space has to be happening all day, every day. Like showing that you will actively listen to people, showing that you value the feedback and that you do your best to incorporate the feedback. If you are making that a culture of how your school runs, your meetings will go better.
I love that. That is a fantastic, I mean, it's really true. Like, your culture of meetings starts even before the meeting does, so yeah. Well, Jody, thank you so much. This was a fantastic conversation, and I can't wait to share it with our audience. And we have lots of great tools for meetings that I'll put in the show notes. But thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Schoolin' Around, a podcast hosted by Branching Minds. Go ahead and subscribe to our feed wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget, if you are enjoying our content, would you do us a favor and rate and review our podcast on iTunes? This helps others find our podcast and lets us know how much you love what we're creating. Branching Minds is an educational technology company using learning sciences and technology to help districts effectively personalize learning through MTSS. To learn more about us, check out our website, branchingminds.com, or follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn at Branching Minds.